Air on mine. Okay.
Okay.
We're live. Hello.
So
I'm Light in the Darkness. Hello.
I'm Fee Keeley. So welcome to, what did we decide it was?
I think Alchemic Tea. I think we're going like Alchemy Tea or Alchemic Tea because we're kind of revamping what we're doing.
Yes, it is Alchemy Tea Time.
Yes.
So welcome to Magical Aspiring Girls Alchemy Tea Time, aka tea and books plus other nerdish things.
Yeah.
Because we want to talk about video games.
And many other things. Yes. We're branching out a little bit.
Branching out is a good thing.
Yes. So we had previously I think we talked about at the end of the video that we're going to be doing Isla and the Happily Ever After, but we may not have. But that's the book that we decided to go after for our book of the, I guess now it's considered the season.
Because we're both college/grad students and we have no time. So
I just graduated. So that was my excuse. I had to study to do.
Graduated.
Thank you. Yes, I've graduated, now going to graduate school. So
you join the graduate student nation.
Yes.
I just finished year 3 of grad school. 3 down. What, 4 more to go?
Oh yeah. I haven't even started, so it's gonna be crazy that I don't even know how many. It depends on what program I get into before I can even get to PhD status. So we'll see. All right, so we'll get into the nitty-grittiness of the book in more spoiler territory. We'll kind of mention that. But do you want to give your overall impression first?
So this was far from the first time I read Isla and the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins. I have a library copy right now because my copy is not here in my parents' abode. It is back in New Orleans, a solid 12-hour drive from here. So, you know, get a copy from the library way cheaper than buying a second one. But that being said, Isla and the Happily Ever After it's a good candy novel. It's really fun. It's sweet. It does have its moments that are pretty dang dark for a happy-go-lucky candy contemporary read, but it's such a fun one. And it happens in Paris, so my Francophile heart is greatly rejoicing in this. I like Isla. She's a fun character. I like Josh. He's also a fun character. It talks about graphic novels. I don't know if I agree that Zvar is such a great author personally. I've read 1 or 2 of his and I wasn't a huge fan, but still, it was fun.
Good. What was your kind of rating that you did on Goodreads?
I think I wound up giving it's another one where I really want the halfway marker. I would have given it a 4.5. Probably debating on how I was feeling when I read it that day, whether I would rank it as a 4 or a 5 because of lack of 4.5. So, on days when I'm really happy about it, it's a 5. On days when it's not the best, and Isla, you're an idiot sometimes, it goes down to a 4. You know, one of those.
Yeah, for me, I kind of had it a 4 because I guess it's not like graphic by any means, but I always feel uncomfortable with sex scenes in books. Just a little bit. So anytime that I feel uncomfortable, I don't give it a 4.5 or anything. I could just give it a 4. But I really did like the coming out of Insta Love. I liked that.
Yeah, it's
that it was more of a realistic, like you see the Insta Love and then it kind of is a little bit. I mean, that's kind of spoilerish, but it's not like. It did take me a bit to get into it because of the Insta Love at the beginning, because I was like, oh, that's really sugary sweet. But then at the same time, I liked it because I'm a huge fan of those fanfics anyway.
Yeah, and the fact that it wasn't so much Insta Love as this is the moment where it all clicked for both parties, because We've known each other.
It wasn't like it was the insta love, like you fall in love the moment you see each other. It was kind of
in love with him for years. It's the it's the first
like suddenly like, oh, we're finally coming together. So it's not necessarily insta love in the way that
we usually think about.
I guess it got really hot and heavy really quick.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the better way to say it, probably. And so I give it a solid 4 because I really liked the way that it was built up, and I liked I liked that it was the characters grew, both of them individually. Isla and Josh really grew, and I really liked her best friend. I loved him.
It was so much fun.
Yeah. And I thought it was respectful the way they portrayed him, so I liked that. Yeah. I don't want to get into too much spoiler territory there, so we'll just kind of say spoilers now.
Yeah. I don't know how much I would say it's a spoiler, but Kurt has autism, and they do a pretty good job of conveying, this is a kid with autism. It's not a big deal. It's not like he's high on the spectrum. He's really low on the spectrum. As Isla puts it, it's what they used to call Asperger's, but it's high functioning autism. So there's some things that he just doesn't get. There's some things that he's always going to do. That's it. He's just like everyone else other than that.
Yeah, and I liked that they didn't really make it a triangle.
Mm.
I liked that.
Straight up from the beginning, it was like, Kurt and I are basically siblings.
Yeah, I liked that. I was glad that it never went beyond that. I was so glad because I felt like we don't see enough of that, where it's that mutual trust between two friends. Mm-hmm. Because there are those friendships that never really turn into romance. So I liked that.
Mm-hmm. I did too. It was, like I said, it was a really solid read. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it depends on how I'm feeling that day, whether I rank it 5 or a 4, which is why I give it a 4.5 usually. Goodreads, split your stars, please, for the love of God.
Yeah. So many people always keep on saying that. YouTubers and booktubers are always just like, can we please just have like a half rating system? I'm wondering why they haven't done it yet, because surely they've seen it and seen the reviews. So maybe someday. You'd think maybe they would add it with the iPhone app or something, but oh well, someday. But I really liked it. I thought it was a nice contemporary read because, I mean, I'm a huge fan of fantasy reads, as we've mentioned many times. That's like my thing. So I really liked this contemporary because it wasn't like I can't do the over nauseatingly sweet, like where there's no realistic. It's just so nauseatingly sweet contemporaries. But I can do the contemporaries where it's got a kind of mix. And I felt Isla was like a realistic mix. I mean, it still, of course, had its super, super fluffiness and the super hot and heaviness and everything that you want in a contemporary. But I really liked the way that it was handled. It was a nice close to those 3 books. I mean, I don't think she's making a 4th one in the series, is she?
No. Her next one.
I thought this was the last one, right?
Isla in the Happily Ever After is the last one of 3.
Okay, yeah.
So you have Anna and the French Kiss first, then Lola and the Boy Next Door.
Yes, it was Lola and the Boy Next Door. That was it.
Yeah, and then Isla and Happily Ever After. It's a contained trilogy. I mean, I guess theoretically she could add more into it, but it would be sort of honestly, I would say go for Hattie as your main character. Yeah. There's a tendency to introduce characters that show up again. So. But I know the next book she's publishing, I forget its name.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But it's going to be like a slasher horror fic.
Oh, gosh. I don't think I can do a slasher horror. Oh, my cat's looking at me. I'm sorry, Ashy.
Let me look at that.
Anyway, so I think that in general, I think I would recommend it, especially if you want a book that's I think it's a good summer read personally. I think it's a nice sit down read that you can get through, but it's also nice as I took my time reading it over a period of days, so I just kind of took it in chunks. But I also think it's nice to binge read it. What do you think?
No, I read it in a day. I mean, granted, I think the first time I read it in a day, maybe two. But yeah, I usually read it in like a day or just bits and pieces over the course of a couple days. My thought is this is a really good YA beach read.
Yeah, that I think so too. That's something that would be really nice. It's a nice kind of relaxing. I mean, of course, it's got its moments, but it's one of those nice reads that you can really get into and enjoy a day at the beach. I haven't done that in forever, but yeah.
Oh, by
So
the by.
moving on, do we want to talk about our TBRs now?
Yeah, just let me say that the new Stephanie Perkins book that's coming out this fall, I believe, is called "There's Someone Inside Your House," and it's it's a horror book. It actually looks really interesting. It's going to be coming out September 26th. But yeah, classic teen slasher story.
I'm not a horror fan, but for those of you that are, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll check it out. I don't know if I'll finish it, but I'll check it out. Before we get into the TBR.
Yeah, we got to do our tea.
What's the tea? So I am drinking the Peachberry Jasmine Sutra flavored green tea from Tivana. Thank you, Tivana, for spoiling people like me who are loose leaf tea snobs. Of course, it's entirely your fault that I'm a loose leaf tea snob, but we're not going to go into that part of the discussion.
It's absolutely delicious, guys. I tried some. It's really good. And I was actually working with my professor before this, so I picked up a mango black iced tea lemonade because it's like my summer addiction. So, and yes, I did get the largest size ever, but it's good. So,
yeah, I mean, when I go that route, I tend to go the peach green tea lemonade.
I've had that too, and I like it. I like it a lot as well.
But the mango is perfectly good.
So that is our.
That is our tea. So, what is currently in your? Do you want to do TBR first, or do you want to do recent reads?
We can do recent reads. I'll do my top 3.
Go for it.
Okay, so what I've recently read is I'm still in my light novel phase, I must admit. I've been reading my teen romantic comedy is Wrong as I Expected. It's very good. The main character is very cynical, and I really enjoy it because sometimes I feel the way he does about certain things. But he's over the top, and I think that's why I like the story. And don't be deceived by the covers. There's not any fan service in it. Not in the way they imply. There's not as much fan service. It's really, really good because it kind of talks about relationships and friendships. And the main character has been isolated his first year of high school, and it's kind of coming to the realization that he doesn't have to be a loner. So I really like that development. The other one that I've been reading is I started and then stopped the previous book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses. I think it was A Court of Mist and Fury is the second book.
Yes, it is.
When you've got your OTP in book 1 and then it crashes and burns in book 2, quite obviously and in the worst way possible with character assassination of said previous love interest, it's very painful. But when you like said author and you really enjoy her works and you like the fantasy world that has been created, you still read it, but at the same time, you're angry the whole time. So it's been hard to inch through it. So,
yeah.
But I did pick up book 3. I picked up the limited edition of book 3 that has Sarah J. Maas's signature engraved on the front. I know, but it was on sale for 20% off at Target, so I got it. And it has a letter from her. It's the last book in the series. There's God. That. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I know Tamlin and Fair were my favorite, or were my OTP as well. And I knew something bad was going to happen if they did a book 2 because of Rise.
Yeah. I could see, I was actually surprised that she didn't even do it in book 1 because it was so obviously implied. And I was like, no, don't do this. And I don't know if anybody has heard of this term, but NTR, this is an Otome game and dating game from video game term for you have complete character assassination, prior love interest, brand new love interest, and that's the love interest that steals the girl. So that was exactly what happened in this, but she loves that. That's what the author loves. She did it in her prior series. Spoiler, but she did it in Throne of Glass series.
Well, in the Throne of Glass series, at least when she does her assassination, she tends to, I mean, even with the Kale one, it's just characters overreacting, characters underreacting. Granted,
well, I think what it was is that she introduced the new love interest in book 3. Yes. And that was kind of the thing. But it made realistic sense.
Right. She introduced him to vacuum, and this is after she's already had some serious issues with both of the prior love interests. So it worked there. In this one, she had to, from what I understand, because I heard about it.
The prior characters to shreds, completely reveal his character to be something totally different. So it's worse. It's worse.
It's not as good writing, honestly. I mean,
it bothers me. It still bothers me, especially because it was in such a way that the main character felt so betrayed that she absolutely hated her prior love interest. And that's why I have a problem with it. But I'm still going to finish it. I feel like I have a duty to finish it. I really love the world she created. I love the courts, and I love that. And I do want to see how her sister's romances play out.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can't bring myself to read the second one, partially for me because, okay, so A Court of Thorns and Roses, it's either based off of Beauty and the Beast, or in my opinion, it's more likely that she based it off a Norse fairy tale called East of the Sun and West of the Moon, which is one of my very favorite fairy tales. And I can't see it destroyed like this.
It's good as a standalone in my mind, personally. So I understand. I think it's just my loyalty to Sarah J. Maas as a writer that I want to finish it.
Right.
And I bought the books. So I kind of got myself sucked in. So that's kind of what I've been on is that one. And then what was the other one that I read? I guess I'm trying to think because I've read a couple graphic novels recently. So, oh yeah, I started reading the Zelda Twilight Princess manga. And we'll just talk about the graphic novels I've read right now. They came out with the Zelda Twilight Princess graphic novel, the manga that was, I think the art's really pretty in it. What's interesting is that Link is very much more animated in the Zelda Twilight Princess, and his backstory is totally different, which I thought was interesting. I was like, oh, well, this is different. So he has much more fleshed out backstory in the manga. It's very different in tone at the beginning because you kind of saw the contrast in the game where it's lighter before things happen, and then it leads into the dark. This is entirely dark from beginning to end. It's very drastically different. I was very surprised. So it's interesting. I think there's only 2 volumes out right now. I don't know if it goes past 2 volumes, but it's very interesting. And if you like Zelda, check it out. So that's the third one that I've kind of got into.
Okay. So on my end for the recent reads, so back in December, I went on kind of a pre-order binge and pre-ordered everything. Now they're all starting to come out one right after the other. So I've been reading a lot of my pre-order books, specifically. So I am a massive fan of a book series, a trilogy called the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy by Kevin Kwan.
It sounds fantastic, of course. I want to, that's my next on my list next.
Yeah. So the first book is Crazy Rich Asians. Second book is China Rich Girlfriend. And the last one that just came out is Rich People Problems. So it's sort of like adult Gossip Girl for the Chinese set. One of the main characters is from Singapore, and his family is psychotically rich, and they're from Singapore with branches in Hong Kong, and some people are related to the royal family of Thailand, that sort of thing. And then book 2, we find out that one of the big characters has ties to a really wealthy family in China, and it's insanity. And it's such a gloriously self-mocking insanity. If you read the author notes, you find out that the author's probably from a pretty well-off family himself from Singapore. So he knows that which he's talking about, and he's gleefully mocking it, even though that's part of, who he is. So it's one of those, it's great. It's wonderful.
I think it sounds fantastic, personally.
It's really good. There's actually going to be a movie. I think it's going to come out in 2018 or something. I'd have to
if you're around, we need to go see it and then review.
Yes.
If you're around town and I'm around town, then we need to go see it and review. Yeah.
We'll figure it out. But yes, there's a movie coming out in a couple years, but there's a cast list. It looks like it's going to be so much fun. And it is such a fun series. And the last one, sadly, Rich People Problem, I think it's a 4.5 to 4.75 amongst fives. I gave it a 5 on Goodreads because it was solid and it was good. It's just it wasn't as good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, especially with their third book, you expect an elevation of the first two. So if any aspect that makes you feel like it's not living up to book 2 or book 1, I always feel like sometimes you can rate it as like a little bit lower.
Right. No, it wasn't as good. Especially, I don't think it was as good as book 1. Definitely wasn't as good as book 2. I think book 2 is the best one. But book 3 was still really solid. I really enjoyed it. So much fun. But at the same time, because it was dealing with a death in the family as one of the central plot points. Yeah.
It's a downer. I mean, it kind of pulls from the humor a little bit, right?
Right. Because you can't have, I mean, they did manage to bring some humor even into that with one of the granddaughters-in-law going, and now I am stuck with these crazy people for 2 more weeks. God damn it. But granted, this is an in-law who's just meeting the moderately insane family. And she's just like, why are you doing this to me? I love you, husband of mine, but your family, only one of them seems relatively normal. But still, it was really, there was a solid down. And yeah.
It's a total difference from the first 2 as well, I guess.
I mean, it got dark at points in both of the other 2. Like, there were some pretty severe family issues talked about, but not like the death that happened. So, yeah, and he did a really good job of pulling it back up. But still, it's just like, maybe you shouldn't have done that. That being said, so Rich People Problems, solid recommendation for the entire series. Kevin Kwan, go read them. You'll enjoy them. Then
I think you froze for a little bit.
Oh, so like I said, check it. Rich People Problems, fairly solid conclusion to a really awesome series. Kevin Kwan, go read them. Then my other recent read, again doing the top 3, was Refuge from Masterminds by Kathleen Baldwin, which actually came out on the same day as Rich People Problems, making my priorities very. But Refuge from Masterminds is book 3 of 5 in the Strange House series. Started with A School for Unusual Girls and continued in Exile for Dreamers. I didn't like Refuge for Masterminds as much as I liked the first 2, or at least definitely not book 2. It was probably about on par with book 1. It was an interesting read. I enjoyed reading it. It's just there's a love triangle that I felt she could have exploited to hell and back, and she didn't.
Yeah, I do have to say in that case, it would have made the story really, from what you've told me, it would have made it a lot more interesting to explore. I mean, from what you said, it was interesting anyway, but I think it would have been cool to explore that. It's just like, oh, such a shame.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say much about it because it's massive, massive, massive spoilers.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of I read it and I went, but this would be more interesting than primary love interest who I know from the start is going to win. Why can't we have him win?
Yeah. I always think those are fun where you're just like, well, this is like like there's always this thing in stories where the first potential love interest that's introduced is usually the one the character ends up with. Most usually. I always think it's interesting when that character is flipped and you don't really have like it's not a long drawn out triangle. It's pretty obvious that the person they've met the second time is a little bit more invested than the first, but you still see that sexual tension between the first person that they've seen. I like that, but I've always seen where it's the first person that they always meet is always the love interest at the end that wins.
Yeah, and
predictable, and I'm like, oh, I don't want that highly predictable love, but.
And I mean, I felt like this could be a really interesting relationship. I mean, I totally get why she went the way she did, but at the same time, it's like, this is a really good guy who cares about you on some level and cares about other people in his life. And this could be really interesting if you just give him a freaking shot.
Yeah.
But, oh well, I digress. For number 3, oh goodness, for number 3, I'm probably gonna have to go with a graphic novel that I picked up. So I binged a costume analysis channel, or costume and cosplay channel a while back. And one of the costume analysis segments, like, what do we think, or review, I guess, more than analysis, but they recommended this graphic novel called Death Vigil by, okay, let's see if I remember how to do my Slavic languages today. Stjepan Shades. I think that's right. Like I said, see if I remember my Slavic languages today. But it's called Death Vigil. And it's a lovely, lovely story with a lovely, lovely concept. The characters are fun and interesting, and I really would have wanted more. It was great. So I tried to find volume 2 after I finished volume 1, going, more. And lo, the only thing I could find was a Twitter posting from Stjepan Shades saying, so Death Vigil is dead. It wasn't selling very well, and I have to make rent. I'm like, totally reasonable. Takes a lot.
That's a shame. I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, you get it. You totally and wholeheartedly get it. It takes a lot of time and effort to make a graphic novel. Or heck, he was doing issues, so graphic issues of graphic novels to go together to make a volume. It takes a lot of time, good chunk of money. You have to have your publisher support and everything. And frankly, if you aren't getting the monetary results and your company or your publisher jerks it, because that's what I'm betting happened, then you don't have a choice. You have to drop it so you can pay your rent. There are other projects that need your attention. I think he's also the author of Rat Queens, which I believe is selling better. So, but it's just one of those things where it's like, seriously, people. I mean, I looked at the comments on the announcement on Twitter, and someone's like, "Why don't you do Kickstarter or something?" And he's like, "I don't do Kickstarter." I'm like, "You are a smart man."
Yeah, I've always thought that Kickstarter. I've never invested in Kickstarters ever, but there's been many things that I've wanted to invest in. Like, for example, when they did, I knew this would be successful because it already had reached its goal when I saw it. But I don't know if anybody who's watching has heard of Clanad, but Clanad is a very popular anime visual novel manga series. It started as a visual novel, and the visual novel had never been released in English before. It had had patches and everything, of course, but they've never had a PC release or anything of that kind. And the Kickstarter I think it was by Sekai Project, and Sekai Project has been doing this a lot recently. They started a Kickstarter, and they got enough people to invest in it, and because of that, they were able to release physical copies to the people who bought the Kickstarter packages. So in that case, it kind of worked, but I didn't invest myself.
Right. It works. Honestly, I think Kickstarters work better whenever you have an actual company behind it.
Yes, and they are a company, so.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter, which was insane. Yeah, you're probably going to get Shenmue 3. But
yeah, they've been working on that. I think it's a slow process, but it was very successful.
Oh yeah, and they got an insane amount of money because I recall, because I watched a lot of Final Fantasy VII Remake reaction videos, and Shenmue 3 seemed to be in the same band. And the general, like, I distinctly remember somebody going, "Here, take my money, take it all."
Exactly. There were a lot of cheers during that particular E3 for many reasons, and then our souls got crushed when Final Fantasy 15 was released. We'll talk about that another time. So going on from that, you want to continue with your graphic novel? I took you off track.
Yeah, Death Vigil. Honestly, I feel like reading just the one volume that there is worth it. The premise is, okay, so I can't tell you tons without spoiling what there is. It would be easier if it was longer, so I had more room to prevent massive spoilers, but there you are. So it operates sort of around this premise that the Grim Reaper needs henchmen. They don't call themselves her henchmen, but that is essentially what they are, and I find it to be fun to call them that. So the Grim Reaper, when you die, I assume, when you die, if you have a potential they call the gift, then you can essentially be brought back as the Grim Reaper's henchman. And so when you are brought back, the Grim Reaper establishes you as sort of an immortal, locked in stasis character. Like you aren't going to age any. You aren't going to die unless you die in conflict to defend what they call the veil, which I believe is sort of like the veil between life and death. It's complicated, and it didn't really get explained super well because no time. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that isn't fully explained that I give them a lot of slack for because, this was volume 1. If he'd had X, however many volumes he intended to have, we might have gotten some damn answers, but I digress. So you are given some sort of tool that is I forgot the term, but you have a tool that you are given to use against the eldritch abominations, which attempt to cross over with the aid of necromancers. The people trying to bring the dead back to life and all that good stuff. And sometimes may communicate with primordial beings. I'm looking at you, Cthulhu. You can tell they got some serious influence from Cthulhu and the rest of Lovecraftian horror stuff. Just in the art design and the fact that they call them the primordials, and I'm like, you read too much Lovecraft.
I'm sorry, my cat's having trouble. Hold on.
Okay. So continuing while Ree is going to take care of her very ill kitty. You have this going on, and so you have these white-haired people going around and fighting against the eldritch abominations, which would be rather dull, except your weapon doesn't work the way you think it is, and some of your weapons are rather unusual. Our protagonist has a quill pen. I'm not making that up. One of the others has a pickaxe and a shovel that are his tool weapons.
Mac, she's okay. This is my other cat, surprisingly.
Yeah, so I continued a bit. Basically, you have a tool given to you by the Veil / the Grim Reaper and the Grim Reaper Scythe working in concert. that you use to fight the Eldritch Abominations brought around by the Necromancers. Main character has a quill pen. One of the others has a pickaxe and a shovel. Third person has a deck of playing cards. I think they're like tarot.
I think the quill sounds like the most fun.
Well, she figures it out. So it's like she can use it to unmake someone a necromancer, which makes sense in context. And she can use it to read minds and do nifty things like open portals in the fabric of reality. I don't know, big.
That sounds cool.
It really is. It's watching Clara, the main character, who is a newbie to the Death Vigil, learn. That's what they call themselves, the henchmen, Death Vigil. It's really interesting and fun, and there's Eldritch Abominations, which are actually on the side of good, because necromancers can be misguided too, and they can summon Eldritch Abominations and use them for various reasons. And basically you have an Eldritch Abomination that's also basically a 14-year-old girl, maybe a 15-year-old. And what's really fun about that one is that it's a father-daughter team for the Necromancer and the Eldritch Abomination. And the father doesn't really get along with the Grim Reaper, who is basically the mother figure to her henchmen. And meanwhile, you have physically the youngest of the Death Vigil people that we meet, kid named James, who's 15, 16 or so. And Mia, the Eldritch Abomination, who is essentially a 14, 15-year-old girl, who are in that lovely and adorable stage of besties, but we might be interested in something more, but we're just friends, really.
I always think those are fun.
They really are, and it's one of those things where it's like you genuinely look at them and go, are you just friends, or are you are awfully close. You are snuggling. That is awfully snuggly. But you're playing video games and you're looking at each other's screens because they are big-time RPG players and they like playing them together. But that is awfully snuggly. And that is awfully like, are you? So watching them interact is really fun, adorable, interesting.
It's a shame that it didn't continue. It sounds really cute. I'm definitely gonna look at it for sure if I can find it easily. But yeah,
I know they have it at my library, so they might have it at yours. And they have it on Amazon.
They're moving the library for where I am. They're moving the library, so it'll be a while. But yeah, they decided to move it from where a lot of people can get to the library to a place where not a lot of people can get to the library if they don't have a car.
That makes
sense. Which I thought was not productive. And then they also wanted to add a movie theater into it, and then they decided not to add a movie theater into it, and it's like about $1 million library, and I'm like, what?
I mean, granted, one of the few things I think is a good thing about my parents moving to a new town after I was already out of the house is that the public library here, and I'm not going to mention where here is because my parents wouldn't like it, but one of the best things about this town is that they have a really, really nice public library and a really nice.
I thought it was really nice when I saw it. Very nice.
Yeah. So there's
ours is trying to be that way, but oh gosh,
I mean,
there's a lot of issues with city planning where I live. Lots of issues.
Yeah.
Lots of empty strip malls. Yay.
I mean, part of it's also that they have a bunch of branches here. So like you have your main library branch, which is the one I tend to use, if only because it has a coffee shop inside. A local coffee shop, not a Starbucks. So that's extra levels of cool. But also, if you don't have time to go maybe 15, 20 minutes to the library center, the main one, then you probably have time to run by one of the hubs that could be more or less anywhere. I think we have one that's 10 minutes or at least not as far out of the way. Like my mom has a habit of using one of them that's really close to our church and saying, okay, send everything here. And then after Wednesday night services or Wednesday night Bible study type thing, I can just swing by, pick up my books, and be on my way, which is infinitely faster than having to make a totally separate trip out to the library. So
yeah, that's really nice. Ours is going to be 15 minutes away from me, in the middle of tons of different traffic. I think it's in the middle of a couple apartment complexes, but it's going to take a while for some of those kids to walk there. So I'm just like, oh, great. But enough talk about how terrible my city planning is. Do you want to move on to the E3 section, or do you want to do TBRs next?
Let's do TBR.
Okay.
So
I'll do my top next 3 TBRs. I do want to do the Crazy Rich Asian series. So I'm going to at least pick up one of those, pick up the first book of that. Next, I'm also going to probably continue reading Sarah J. Maas's series, Court of Thorns and Roses, and just finish that. So I'm counting that as my second book. I'm just going to read them both at once and get it over with. Isn't that sad when you say you just want to get it over with?
Yeah, really sad.
Yeah. So, and then after that, I think I'm going to probably delve into reading. I'm between doing Crown's Game next or doing what was the one that I just got one on my Kindle, and I think I have it here. Yeah, I'm in between doing a study in Charlotte next.
That one's pretty good. I did a review on it a while ago.
Yeah, so either that, 3 Dark Crowns, or 6 of Crows next, since I have those on my Kindle, because I'll be going on a trip, and that'll be easily accessible for me to read on my phone. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm planning.
Fair enough.
And what about you?
Sounds good. I also am getting ready to head out on a trip, so yay, long plane rides. Plus, I don't know what the internet connection's going to be like in Guatemala.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That being said, so my next 3 are, well, okay, I have one that I'm going to be reading next, but it's not on my top. The new Sarah Dessen novel, Once and For All, comes out on June 6th. I pre-ordered it ages and ages ago because I'm a massive Sarah Dessen fangirl. Read like all of them and liked most of them, so really excited. Then the next one is Our Dark Duets by Victoria Schwab is coming out, and I really like the previous one. His name escapes me at this moment.
The Savage Song?
Yeah. I really like the Savage Song, which really surprised me, actually, because okay, bring out your torches and pitchforks. I don't actually like V.E. Schwab that much. I couldn't.
Yeah, sometimes her stuff I just can't get into. I was able to go through A Darker Shade of Magic and force my way through it, but I won't pick up the second book. I didn't like the way that one of her characters was written, Lila. I think it was Lila, wasn't it? Layla, yeah, something like that. Lila. And I was like, can we just kill her off, please? And no, she still continues to be a main character, supposedly to the last book, if it is the last book. And I'm just like, she just gets worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I have not picked up the next 2 books in the series. I mean, I started reading A Darker Shade of Magic. I couldn't finish it. It was just like, okay, I'm not enjoying it this much. I'm a grad student. I don't have time to deal with this. Yeah. I will read something I actually enjoy. I also read The Archive, which I actually did. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan, but I'm like, this one is, I can get through this. This one's not too bad. I think it's better than The Darker Shade of Magic. I think the problem with The Darker Shade of Magic is that she had too likable of a character that did not grow in a way that was satisfactory. Yeah, it's like, if it had been just Kale, then I probably could have worked around it. Yeah, but I think it would be better because it's not like they really made too much of a romance out of it anyway. So it's like, why is she there? Yeah. I just feels like it. Not like Kale. Well, I was okay with Kale. I wasn't a huge fan of him. It's like, I get you. You work. But Lila, it was just like, why is she there? Why are we doing this? Yeah. Yeah, I don't like her at all. And I'm not going to start that rant again.
So that being said, I'm not a huge V.E. Schwab fan. So with this Savage Song, my thought was, okay, I'm checking it out from my library. I'll read the first 100 pages, and if I think it's good, then I'll keep reading and finish it and all that. And if I don't, then I throw up my hands in disgust. I give up on you, V.E. Schwab. And so I pushed a little past the 100-page mark. Not much, but I was enjoying it, and then I had to give it back to the library because I was moving. And then I stopped for a couple months, but picked it back up again and just dove in and really, really loved it. They gave me a bard. What more could I ask for, you know? So now I'm really looking forward to this dark duet, and it comes in right before I go to Guatemala. So plain read! Yay!
That will be fun, yeah. I'm glad that you've got a good book for the plane ride. Mine's kind of a short plane ride. I've got about 4 hours, and I know yours is like much longer.
Actually, it's really not. It's two.
Oh, really?
I think it adds up to about 6, 7.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, the worst part is I take off at 6 a.m.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think ours is early too, so. But
right side,
I can always read on the way back if I sleep on the way there.
I mean, I get back. I get to Guatemala City Airport at 1:30 in the afternoon, which kind of makes it worth it, in my opinion. So I'm going to do that. So I'm really looking forward to this dark duet and seeing how August evolves in particular. I mean, the female lead characters, I didn't like her as much as I liked August. It was August.
Yeah. From what I've read, I don't really like her as much as I do August as well.
She's a compelling character, but it's just August. But I got bored with. Okay.
He's like the pure innocent cinnamon roll. Only he's got more sin than cinnamon roll. It's more sin in the cinnamon roll.
Yeah. Cinnamon with an S.
Yeah.
It's not even that. It's one of those things where it's like he had to confront his nature, and most of the time whenever it's like you confront your nature, you go, yeah, this might be my nature, but I can come out on top. I'm a better person than this, and I can, just because it's what I physically am doesn't mean that that's who I have to be. And with August, it's like, no, I'm confronting my nature. And, you know, I've been running away from who I am. And yeah, what I am kind of sucks, but it's who I am. Why am I running? I can do so much for good with what I am. I can do so much bad with what I am. And that's going to be my decision. But you know what? This is who I need to be, and I can do this. I can stand up for people who can't combat this. And I really liked that, because so often it's like you should turn your back on who you are because you're better than that. And for August, it's like, no. I need to grow up, accept who I am, and stop trying to be a child and hide from it. I thought it was really a good contrast and different.
Yeah, I've always liked those stories, especially when you know someone who's, if they're kind of like an anti-hero, you could say, where they've done a lot of bad, and they can very easily walk across that blurred line that's a little too far. Mm-hmm. But whenever they've accepted and have the responsibility for it, it's a little bit more interesting of a character, more well-rounded.
I mean, that's not exactly what August is, but I can't tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet, so.
But, you know, I want to see what the next book is going to do with August now that he's had this acknowledgement of who he is, and I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm. So that's my second one. And my third one, oh goodness, so many options. We're finally coming towards the end of my list of books that are just coming out, thank God. So basically I really love fantasy. I really like epic fantasy. I don't get to read it very often because it so very often involves you being able to put in a lot of mental effort and a lot of time into them, and it's hard to just drop it for a while and pick it back up, drop, pick up, at least with the really good ones. So I don't read it very often, except for maybe on a break or something like that, because that's when I have long, uninterrupted spans of time. Fair enough, right?
Yes.
So I found one on the internet that's older, called A Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkin. Yes.
Oh, I have a couple. I have a couple of those books, and my friend really likes. And she's a huge fan of epic fantasy, but she doesn't read as much
Right.
novels. She likes a lot of the mangas, but she actually gave me one of Terry Goodkine's books for my birthday. Like about, I guess it's been 5 years now, and it was part of a huge long series in epic fantasy. So I haven't gotten through all of them, but I like the writing a lot.
That's good. I mean, I liked the premise that I found online, and I'm like, you know what? I want another epic fantasy that's not. I mean, the closest thing to an epic fantasy I've read in a long time has really, well, two things. One has been an audiobook of a series that I've already read. So the Belgariad by David Eddings is on Hoopla, which my library has, and so that's lovely. But more importantly, I've been working my way ever so slowly through the Throne of Glass series, which is kind of sort of not really epic fantasy. It's high fantasy, but it's not epic fantasy.
Yeah, it's more high fantasy, I would say. And it is hard to get through those books. I have not gotten to the latest release yet. It's kind of it's kind of like an epic fantasy where you have to have a lot of time to really invest in it, because there is so much going on. There's like so many characters and a lot of backstory that you have to keep track of. Especially when it comes to one of the characters that she introduces and has an entire point of view for Mandan. Right. So, yeah.
Now, it just occurs to me that I probably want to do a video going into the types of fantasy, because fantasy is one of those genres that has, it seems like it doesn't have that many subgenres until you start going into where they overlap and where they underlap and where they're, no, these two do not work well together. And it's really convoluted. But like we're saying, the Throne of Glass series is a high fantasy. So it has like elves, alternate universe, generally medievalish setting, that sort of thing. But it's not an epic fantasy. There's no, I mean, you're trying to regain your throne and everything, but it's not a quest. That's generally the major characteristic of your epic fantasy. So there's no.
It's kind of episodic, I would say. Wouldn't you? The epic a little bit more episodic?
Epic. I don't know about episodic, but there's usually some overarching.
Maybe I'm kind of thinking of. Yeah, I mean, and probably the most. Would you say that the Lord of the Rings is kind of more epic in your opinion?
Lord of the Rings is your showcase epic fantasy. Lord of the Rings, you have your quest, let's destroy the ring, and yes, there's other things going on, but they play into that quest. That's
kind of how I've always thought of epic fantasy. Is Lord of the Rings is definitely like that is epic fantasy. If you think about epic fantasy, that is it. High fantasy. I mean, I would even say that I guess. Game of Thrones is more.
Yeah, Game of Thrones counts as high fantasy.
I think it could even be considered. It wouldn't be considered epic because there are so many overlapping storylines with it.
Yeah, there's not
episodic in a way, but it's more high fantasy.
Yeah. Okay. So, and there's overlap. I mean, Lord of the Rings is also high fantasy, but it is predominantly epic fantasy. You have to have that quest, that central quest, to make it epic. You can have a shift over in your quest, like in the Belgariad, it shifts from find the magic thingamajig to defeat the big bad, but finding the magic thingamajig played into defeating the big bad. You couldn't do the big bad without the magic thingamajig, so gotta do. But without the central quest, it's not epic. And an epic fantasy does not have to be high fantasy. There's usually a lot of overlap, but they do not have to be. That being said, from what I understand, Wizard's First Rule is epic fantasy, in addition to probably being high fantasy. I haven't read it, so I cannot confirm, but that is my understanding of the situation. Whereas something like a Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire, as the book series is called, is high fantasy. Very much high fantasy. There are freaking dragons, and it is a medieval-esque setting. Even if there are not elves, even if you have the people of the children of the trees, or forest. Can you tell I don't read it?
I just know about it because my brother's read it, which is pretty sad because he's too young, but he's read it.
I read book 1, and I really enjoyed book 1, and then I found out about the Red Wedding and everything.
Yeah, I couldn't get into it, but my brother has the book, so if I ever was interested, I can read it.
That being said, it's very much high fantasy, but because there's no central quest plot line, there is no, it's a race to the throne, but it's multiple factions. It is not one group embarking on
You're not focused on just one individual's quest. You've got multiple overlapping quests.
Right.
So,
and even if it was something like Lord of the Rings, where you have multiple facets, but they're all feeding into that quest for the ring. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli might be over here doing something, but what they are doing is, okay, we need to keep Gondor from falling because that increases Frodo's chance of getting to Mount Doom. And if you didn't know about any of this stuff, then I'm sorry, I'm not counting it as spoilers anymore. It's been over 50 years.
The movies have come out. There's lots and lots of information. They're everywhere. If you're worried about spoilers about Lord of the Rings, then you may even have that happen at school. So
yeah, you're too far behind. But so, like I said, Game of Thrones, high fantasy, but not epic fantasy. I think this is going to be both. But after that long divergence, and yes, now I definitely know I need to draw up some charts and do an actual episode on this because goodness, that's going to be fun. And I can get into so much great stuff. But still, I digress. So I got A Wizard's First Rule on reserve at the library. If it comes in soon enough, I'll probably finish it on that copy. But since I'm leaving on the 15th, there's no telling, and I don't know when it's going to come in. So I'm figuring that it'll at least give me time to decide whether I like it or not. And if I do, great. I'll get it on my Kindle, and then I'll keep reading in Guatemala. I'll be there for 6 weeks, so But if I don't like it, then I'll be like, well, this was a fun experiment. Next! But I'm really looking forward to getting into epic fantasy again. Been a while.
Yeah, I really like those kind of genres, and I like writing epic high fantasy. Yeah, that's kind of my thing. But I also like kind of blending some contemporary in there more so than the medieval times. But I like blending them together. Alternate universes is really fun.
Yeah, epic urban fantasy can be a lot of fun. There's so many ways to play fantasy nowadays. Like I said, I need to just sit down and record an episode of Fantasy Explained, subgenres, and what works.
I wonder if you'll have to go into the isekai genre that's like totally blown up.
Isekai? I don't know that one.
Isekai means alternate universe. So like modern boy or girl gets transported to alternate universe or is reincarnated into another alternate universe or something really weird. There's been some weird ones. I've seen some really weird ones. But that's kind of more popular right now in the Japanese light novel scene. I blame Sword Art Online. I blame them. And I blame...
Probably actually falling into the sci-fi.
Well, it's the alternate universe thing.
My general examples of go-to for the isekai, so this get transported into an alternate universe, tends to be, as much as it pains me, Inuyasha.
Inuyasha is one. I must admit, I'm watching Inuyasha right now. Kagome is frustrating. Inuyasha is frustrating. Everybody is really frustrating.
Except Sango and Kilala.
Kilala's the best.
Of course she is. She can't talk.
Exactly.
I say this is the person with a Kilala plushie in her room, so you know. But my go-to is Inuyasha because everyone knows that one, even if I think it's not that great. Then I say this is somebody who used to read so much of the manga, and I've written fan fiction for this thing. I mean, I know
Yeah.
I know. And I acknowledge my failings. But another one that I consider to be really good, especially if you want to do epic fantasy, would be an older one called Kanatakara.
I've not heard of that one.
It's From Far Away is the English translated title. And
it's been a while, so I may have or may not have. I've read so many. So I could have.
And wonderful. And part of it is because the heroine, the person who gets dropped, because it's 9 times out of 10, although not always, 9 times out of 10, it is a girl though. So
there's so many light novels where it's the guy, sadly.
Oh.
Changed a lot.
But
I could name 5 off my hand right now that are all male protagonists, and it's all harem, and I'm not kidding. And it's all isekai.
Okay.
First one, Ray Zero. Second one, Konosuba. Third one, I guess it's they've come from another world, aren't they, or something like that. There's so many. But anyway.
Okay, maybe there aren't quite as many as I thought, but the ones that get made into manga tend to be more feminine. Like you had Inuyasha, Kanatakara is another one. Then, oh goodness, what's the third? I had, Red River, although that one's weird because historical, but there's magic, so I highly recommend that one, by the way. I guess that's most of the ones that really have gotten in there. It's one of those I know if I think about it more, I'll come up with more, but I'm just not.
There's a lot of shoujo. It's mainly the light novel scenes blown up with it, and they're kind of oversaturated. And also the long titles. The long titles is a huge thing right now.
But that being said, so the one I was talking about has a heroine who gets transported into this world, and it's very obvious from the get-go. She has no clue what the freak is going on. So she gets there, no clue what the freak is going on. Her reaction is she latches on to the first person she sees, which, okay, yeah, that's going to happen, which is especially good for her, at least in one way, because he's actually, competent. So his reaction is sort of like, okay, first we're going to ditch everything, almost everything of yours from your world, and we're going to replace it with, like, she lends her his spare outfit sort of deal. And even better is the fact that they can't communicate very well at first. They speak a different language. And she does not get auto comprehension. She's babbling in Japanese at him, and he is babbling in his language or talking. That
makes it so much more interesting because anymore they always are like automatically like she's got like a translation device or there's a magic to suddenly make them be able to talk. Right. I think that's way more interesting.
Like the first arc, basically the first arc is slightly different, but one of the major arcs going into the first novel, first manga is I have to learn this language. I have to be able to communicate. No alternatives. And so when she starts talking, her syntax is a little screwy. She doesn't know words, so she does things like when she's trying to learn the word for star, she's like, small fire in sky. It's like, small fire in sky? You mean stars? Stars, yes! I mean, obviously she's not positive that's actually what he's saying, but she can convey small fire in sky. It's nighttime, and she's pointing. So, small fire in sky. And he's like, small fire in sky, look where you're pointing. Up, star. Which is pretty dang realistic. I'm a linguistic student. This makes me very happy. Things like she says, instead of, things like, I buy this one. So, instead of saying, oh, okay, I want to buy this one, or I will buy this one, it's, I buy. So the most simple present tense form she can. Okay, I'm babbling, but it's really good. And she concludes repeatedly, okay, I'm useless. Literally, I'm useless. I cannot use a sword. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to stick with Azar, our male lead. And at one point, he leaves her with a friend of his, and she's like, okay, I'm going to miss him. I do miss him very much. But this is for the best. He wouldn't have left me here if he didn't think I'd be safe. And because they're friends at that point. He wouldn't have left me here if he didn't think I'd be safe, and it's probably better because this way I don't get in danger. She understands, and she's like, okay, it sucks that he's leaving, and I'm sad, but I'm gonna do this thing. And
so is this one that you read online, by the way, for reference?
This one that I read online, but because it's out of print.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Over here, you can get copies. I believe from Amazon you can get copies still, but they're not like you can buy. You can't just walk into Books A Million or Barnes and Noble and buy it. It's you have to go.
What's the name of it again?
The English title, so that people who watch us will be able to find, is From Far Away. I get the mangaka's name, but From Far Away is really good. I highly recommend it. You can find it on most online manga readers, which are horrible. Like I think I have at least one, maybe two volumes because, like I said, they're harder to get your hands on. Like I found one at a con. I think I found one at a con and one I ordered, but they're really good and worth the effort of tracking down, especially since they're online. And yeah, I feel bad about the fact that you're not supporting the author as much, but totally worth the read. Totally worth the read. But
yeah, I definitely want to look into that because I really enjoy reading mangas because they're easy to get through pretty fast, but also really good with stories. So
yeah.
Well, is that all your TBR for now, or?
Yes, that's my TBR for now.
Okay. So I guess you want to move into talking about geeky stuff.
Let us go.
Okay.
Hey.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some things coming up. So if you're involved in the video game scene, you know that this is a special time of year. Everyone's very excited. It's like Christmas for video gamers. It's very special. If you're a fan of Nintendo or PlayStation, even the terrible Xbox, I'm biased. There's going to be announcements. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's kind of come out now, concerns, excitement, and more concerns, and kind of just go over what we're excited about pre-E3, because we'll possibly come together and talk about our thoughts about E3 possibly when we have time, when we get back from our respective trips. I'm actually going to E3. Yay! Big dream there. So who knows if I'll actually be able to report things on the scene. If you want to see any of that, that'll be on my blog, Light Within the Darkness at tumblr.com. So I'll be talking about stuff there. So basically, one of the first things is if you're a fantasy RPG fan, we have Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is having a big, supposedly, is going to have a bunch of titles that they're going to be having on the floor, and they're going to be talking potentially about Final Fantasy VII Remake, something that many fans have been waiting decades for, and potentially talking about, potentially talking about Kingdom Hearts, as well as, in particular, Kingdom Hearts 3. If we're lucky, we'll get trailers of both of those things, which would be making everybody's year who's in love with those games. Other than that, we do already have an announcement from Square Enix, a small company that works with them called Tokyo RPG Factory. They're going to be publishing a new game in 2018 called, I think it's something Sphere. I'll have to pull it up on my phone. But it's just recently come out today. They announced it. It's have you ever heard of I Am Setsuna?
The name sounds vaguely familiar, although that could just be Setsuma.
Yeah, I Am Setsuna is a video game that was made by Tokyo RPG Factory, and they kind of went back to the turn-based battle system. Ooh. It kind of had a little bit of an action element similar to Final Fantasy VIII, where you waited for the ATB gauge to load while you chose your decisions on what you wanted to do. But that's kind of like what Tokyo RPG Factory is doing. They're bringing pixel, the RPGs that people love deeply from their past, the Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy III, and I guess you could say 7. That kind of battle system is coming back. The story is very much supposed to be like an epic fantasy. So this one is kind of different. They're blending modern with fantasy, and it's called Lost Sphere, and it's about a little boy who suddenly finds his entire town disappearing, and the whole plot of the story is that they're making their memories into reality. So it will be interesting. Yeah. So it is the next evolution in RPG gameplay, they say. So it's kind of going to be one of those. I would say, honestly, it might not be modern. It looks like it's a fantasy realm. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. That's coming out in 2018, so they might have something on the floor there. Another thing that they'll be talking about, because it'll be coming out in less than a month after, is Final Fantasy XII, The Zodiac Age, HD. We are personal fans of Final Fantasy XII. We're doing a rewrite for Final Fantasy XII. We enjoy it. It's going to be a very interesting, very cool to be able to play through that again in high definition with a new battle system. So that is another thing that's going to be there.
I look forward to watching her do this and possibly occasionally controlling the controller. But honestly, I grew up without video games other than a Game Boy Color. So old school. But so I didn't get to play a lot of these, but I had friends who talked about them, and I really love the stories. So
the stories are the best.
Yeah, so I enjoy reading the stories and watching watching the compilation of the cutscenes, so to speak, and watching my friends play them. I know people say that it's not as much fun to watch people play the video game, and I'm like, no.
It is. It is. I've a lot of video games that I know that I don't have the money or the time to invest in. I watch Let's Plays of them so that I can kind of experience it because I love the stories. Right. I did that with Beyond Two Souls because I don't have space on my PlayStation 4. I have to be selective now. So, but I really enjoyed the story on that one. It was very heartfelt, and I mean, video games are more than just gaming. You can really have very deep stories, and that's what Final Fantasy has been known for until Final Fantasy 15. Such the biggest disappointment of my entire RPG experience.
In their defense, it wasn't totally their fault. So Square Enix, as I recently found out, apparently been experiencing some financial issues.
What happened is that before Final Fantasy 15, they did not sell as well with the Final Fantasy 13 series. They sold pretty well. I just think they had too high of expectations. They had a lot of changing with the higher ups. The prior CEO stepped down during this time, and a new one has come up. He's very business minded. He's not invest in the fan. He's very much got a business mindset, and what I've heard is that he's very focused on sales and making sure that the company stays afloat, which is of course important. But when you have fans who are so dedicated as the Final Fantasy fan base, you have to keep in mind that you want to keep those fans. So you've got to, while bringing in new fans, you don't want to alienate the old fans. And I feel that Final Fantasy 15 was a letdown in terms of one of the biggest things that's so important in Final Fantasy in terms of the story. Too many plot holes. We had too much cut content. It was not the game that we had been presented years ago, which is understandable. It had been canceled supposedly and then reborn into Final Fantasy 15. So
yeah, no, like I said, in their defense, I'm big on capitalism and I'm big on figuring things out. And yes, you do have to keep your eye on that online, and you do have to keep in mind, in order to produce awesome video games, you do in fact have to, sell those awesome video games. And that means you have to have a steady production rate. And I think there was also some issues with way long development periods, which is great in terms of story and quality and everything, but you have to produce the video game and get it out. so you can sell it.
Yeah, the problem with Final Fantasy 15 is that what everybody has called development hell is that it kept on getting pushed back because of Final Fantasy 13. Final Fantasy 14 was the major reason. Final Fantasy 14 had a very, very rough start. It was basically a failure in the beginning. Then they came back and brought back A Realm Reborn.
And that one seems to be
they fixed it. The letters that they get, they continually make sure to keep in contact with their fan base, with the letter from the producer, and they sometimes do that over like 24 hours worth of new content. So that has been something that they've learned. They have now been able to fix their MMO genre video games. But because of that, all the time and resources that could have gone into Final Fantasy Versus 13 at the time was pushed back. Continually pushed back. And because Tetsuya Nomura, the director at the time, was
had to go work on the lovely Final Fantasy VII remake, which is totally understand that. That's if you do that, then that would be one, a slap in his face, and two, would have every fan of Final Fantasy VII out paying for your blood. So I mean, realistically speaking, it's what you had to do.
Yeah, but well, the problem with the thing was with Nomura being taking off of Final Fantasy 15 to be put on to Final Fantasy 7, very understandable, but I think it really bothered him that all of his work was cut. Because he said in an interview, he said, I don't know anything about that. I don't talk about it. It was an internal matter. So that kind of tells me like, oh, he is not allowed to say the reason why he was taken off. Because if it was just because of Final Fantasy VII, he would have said it. Well, so that was kind of the thing that was a big divide in the community. We appreciate Tabata because Tabata was the new director of Final Fantasy 15. He did Crisis Core, and he also directed. Yes, he was the one who created Crisis Core. Nomura was not on Crisis Core as the director, but he was the art director and the story supervisor, because he was also working on Kingdom Hearts at the same time. And that's kind of the big problem here, is that he's got so many projects. And Nomura considers himself a business salaryman, which is an interesting depiction of how he thinks of his work. He's more invested in the art and the story more so than the gameplay. He really likes that. He's never said that he's necessarily a huge gamer, so that's interesting. Right. But anyway, that's coming in from that. The reason why fans are concerned about Final Fantasy VII is that it was recently announced that they changed the programmer head. Mobius Final Fantasy, an online mobile game that they've come out, and it's pretty good. The game development
not good.
Yeah. The game development head of that is now the head of also Final Fantasy VII Remake. They also decided to bring all of their external resources internal. So they're not working with, I think it's Games, who worked on the Final Fantasy 13-2 series, and also did some work for Final Fantasy 15, I believe. And they're having it all be done in-house now. Now, does that mean that they're going to cut content that they've already worked on with Games, or are they going to continue with what assets they have? So does that mean that we're going to have the same development hell that Final Fantasy 15 did, where they only have 3 years to finish the game? They cut all the content they previously had, so they're going to redo the story. And because,
hope not.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Yeah.
It must be said, they did a really good job, because most of them still worked for Square Enix, which was Square originally, but still. A lot of the people who were high up on Final Fantasy VII, the original, are still in the company and still very much capable of taking over. So in a way, I would speculate, and from things that I've heard, this project, this remake, is their baby.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is very important.
Yeah, it's very important to them. It's very important to the gaming community, especially older players who remember Final Fantasy VII as the awesome game that brought them to gaming. So this one, I would imagine, even businessman CEO-san, as we call him, knows that if you screw this one up, I don't know if Square Enix could recover from screwing Final Fantasy VII up. I'm going to be honest.
They've already said in many interviews that they were scared to touch it because it does have such a nostalgia factor. When they announced that they were going to go from turn-based to action, because that's kind of the direction of video gaming right now for RPGs, is more of an action instead of a turn weight-based. Interestingly, Persona 5 did turn-based. And if you think about it, Persona 5 did exceptionally well. Very well. So my thoughts on that.
I personally find it disappointing. I don't like action-based as much, but that's probably because my only experience with RPGs growing up was Pokemon, which is very heavily turn-based because baby RPG, so to speak.
Yeah, and they still continue with turn-based. They've not changed the formula at all in terms of, I mean, they've added things to Pokemon, but they've kept that.
But it's still very much. And the other one I did, which is what explains to me 3/4 of what is going on in your standard RPG, is an old school computer game that my dad, I'm a second generation nerd, and my father's the first generation. My dad played this computer game, or the computer game series, because he has all of them, called Wizardry. So that one was really massively popular in the 80s and early 90s, from what I understand, and Dad still played them. So my experience of RPGs when I was growing up is sitting on my dad's lap and watching him do a turn-based turn-based PC RPG. So I love turn-based. Turn-based makes sense. I have time to figure out what the frick I want to do. I can probably control order, who's going to do what, who you're going to hit. None of this button mashing thing that I still can't get to work right. Just let me take the arrow, say, okay, you take out this bad guy and do this attack. Please.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think. The thing that's interesting is like, and I'm just going back to the Persona series because it's been so successful in the past couple years. Persona 4 was widely anticipated, and it was the next jump in terms of a Persona game for a console release from Persona 3. Persona 3 was like literally set the standard for that game series, and it was turn-based. Persona 4 was also turn-based. Persona 5 was turn-based, and they have sold exceptionally well. So I think that Square Enix, feeling that they want to do something different, can go either way. I think the thing is that they know how successful Kingdom Hearts is. Kingdom Hearts is an action RPG. You can you can kind of pause to think about your attacks, but you really memorize the buttons, do different combinations, and attack. That's kind of what they're trying to slightly go for in the new Final Fantasy VII Remake. They did that as well for Final Fantasy 15. It worked well in Final Fantasy 15, but it felt very limited because they decided to go for something very similar to the junction system in Final Fantasy 8, which means that you drew from magic points. You didn't have magic to use freely at will like you have in previous Final Fantasy, like Final Fantasy X. You've seen how that plays, right?
Yeah, at least once.
They didn't. You just worry about the MP and doing with the magic. Final Fantasy 15 did not have that. Final Fantasy 7 is also different in the respect that you have to use materia and equip certain material to be able to use magic. You can't just choose magic, different magic to use at will, like you could in Final Fantasy X once you got all the spears filled up. So Final Fantasy 7 is going to keep the materia system. They are going to be going action RPG somewhat.
If they pull it off, it'll work really well. If they don't pull it off, then everyone will be going, God damn it, why didn't you just do turn-based?
It honestly looked very cool, and I honestly hope that they have enough CPU and data to be able to switch characters like you could and switch leaders like you could in the original game.
Yeah, like I said,
they did not do that for Final Fantasy 15. I'm still hurting. As you can tell, I have very, very much have an issue with Final Fantasy 15. It was like my dream game.
Now,
Anyway.
on the bright side, how Final Fantasy 15 did and how it did with longtime fans of the series versus people who are coming from outside the Final Fantasy fandom, which, hey, we welcome newcomers, that's great. But seeing that should actually help them with Final Fantasy 7, things that worked and things that really didn't work. Because
sadly, what my issue has been with the reviewers, and sorry reviewers, I personally don't care if you liked Final Fantasy 15's story and you thought that it was great that the story was super simple. And I'm like, it was not just super simple. There were no plots actually in there that were explained. That's why you guys didn't really care. You could get it done in like 16 hours. Very short game. I don't like that. I don't like to have a story that's so simple that it doesn't leave. And you don't like, the thing that bothered me is that it was so simple and it had a dramatic end. So you remember the dramatic end, but that was it. There wasn't.
It was rather hollow.
Yes, very much hollow. It didn't have the heart that Final Fantasy X did. Final Fantasy X has one of the most pulled together stories. Very much no plot holes left unexplained. It's not a simple story, but it's not as complex as Final Fantasy XIII's lore.
Yeah.
They should go back to that kind of story where you've got everything explained by the end of the game.
Right.
Got all the important points.
Right.
Final Fantasy didn't do that. And that's kind of what I'm hoping they don't do for 7. And I'm hoping that Nomura, since Nomura's in charge, he'll do it, because we believe in you, Nomura. We believe in you. Stay on.
And on the bright side, like I was about to say, with Final Fantasy VII, you do have that groundwork established by the previous game. So maybe you have to shift something slightly to account for Crisis Core. But
yes, and I think that's the main thing that they're going to focus on, is making sure that Zack's story in Crisis Core is more incorporated, especially Cloud's. This is a spoiler. If you have not played Final Fantasy VII, this is major spoiler.
1998, so really spoiler warning now.
Yeah. But Cloud's overlapping of placing his him thinking that he was Zack is going to be a bit more prominent, I think, because they kind of implied it quite a bit until the very end, and then you were like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that they're going to delve into that a lot more. They're also going to delve into Sephiroth's looming presence over Midgar. And I think that will be fascinating. And I think branching and moving more deeper into the story is what Final Fantasy VII as a remake needs. Right. Because, of course, you've got the iconic lines where Sid's like, how did the line go? It's like, drink your, I'd be cursing. I'm not going to curse on YouTube. They might ding us. Drink your bleak tea. That's one of the iconic lines. And then Cloud, of course, cross-dressing with Aerith and Tifa to get into Don Corneo's mansion. Really important things like that are going to stay there, but they're going to tone down the Honeybee Inn, I heard. Yeah. Which they need to. That was creepy as heck.
I'm not opposed to that. Okay, all fairness, the only Final Fantasy VII game I've played is Crisis Core, and I haven't finished that.
Crisis Core is amazing. I've not finished the final boss battle myself. I watched it because I got stuck.
That being said, I've read the story. I love the story. The story's great. I've watched some footage of it. It's really awesome. And it has a really tight, solid story. Yeah, there are loopholes that got closed with Advent Children, with Crisis Core. From what I understand, Dirge of Cerberus is really freaking weird. And
Dirge of Cerberus kind of added on, but it left a lot of plot holes, you could say. I mean, it explained Vincent's backstory a lot better, and that was very cool. I liked his backstory. The rest of it was unnecessary.
It seems like people are torn between pretending Dirge of Cerberus doesn't exist and, well, Dirge of Cerberus has to exist because Vincent's backstory. But can we not just shove this in a corner and pretend it doesn't exist?
Yeah, his backstory is very integral to Sephiroth's mother, Lucretia.
Mhm.
And that's kind of why people are like, well, we'll keep that. Because that was fascinating. We didn't know that Vincent was connected to Lucretia before Dirge of Cerberus. And it made so much sense after reading. In Dirge of Cerberus, you can read reports from Hojo. And Hojo was kind of the final entity boss in Dirge of Cerberus, you could say, ending up culminating with Omega, but still. It was very interesting to see how Sephiroth came to be, because that was kind of what the backstory in Dirge of Cerberus was. Right. You understood why Lucretia did what she did, but it wasn't necessarily good. She was terrible.
It was a horrible thing to do, but you understood her.
It was interesting to see how she tried to reconcile with herself. And that was what was fascinating, because you didn't really know too much about Sephiroth's real biological mother beyond Genova cells, and how messed up he was. So it was interesting in that respect. And you also found out more about the various experiments that Hojo created, which made him even more terrible, because we absolutely all hate Hojo. We've never not hated him. That was what was the point of Dirge of Cerberus. And I think it'd be interesting if we had those plot points from Dirge of Cerberus reiterated in the remake.
Right. I mean,
that would fix everything.
But still, the plus side is that we do have very much a schedule. This is how it's supposed to work. This is what we're doing. We don't have to do something like, but we are not coming up with a whole new story. And if we did, the fires of hell, they would come from you.
Honestly, I'm guessing that what will happen because of this change is that they will cut anything that they considered adding that would have made it an even better game. And they may add these things as DLC story episodes. So what I'm thinking is that all of this cut content that could possibly happen, we will have to pay money for later in season passes, which is never fun, but it happens too often now. It's part of the formula. It's basically making you buy a $60 game that you used to be able to get everything in, and now you have to pay an extra $15 to $25 to get the rest of it.
I mean, okay, now I'm not a serious gamer at all. Seriously, I'm not. So my opinion is biased. My thought process is that it's not fun, but it's a good, effective way of marketing your game. It works,
and at least it gets it all out there. So it's got its pros and it's got its cons. So if at least what my thought is that they're going to get the first game disc out much faster than they anticipated, because they were given a set deadline and they're freaking out. So good luck, Nora. Good luck, my man. So,
but with the DLC thing, it's like, okay, this sucks, and God, we wish that they would just give it to us for free. Maybe you'll get some sort of discounty thing. I don't know how they market those. Don't ask me.
It depends. Like for the Final Fantasy 15, you could buy the digital version for your PlayStation 4, which is so huge. But when you bought the digital version, you got the season pass with it. You could get a package. And the season pass was $24. And that means you get every single DLC that comes out.
Yeah. So maybe you'd get something like a code that you could enter in for a DLC.
That's essentially what they've been doing, which is good, because they don't want their fans to be irritated that you have to pay like $15 per story episode. You don't want that, because that would the gamers, a lot of them have to be very selective about what they buy. So they've got to be able to be like, okay, I really want this, but do I have the money for it? And something that's like $25 per episode would be insane for most gamers. So,
but if you can say that's $25 per episode, unless you have the code from the game, which encourages you to buy your own game, then instead of just borrowing your friends, then we can give it to you for $10. Which, that still sucks that you have to pay extra, but at the same time, it's like $10 I can do. Or maybe we'll give it to you for free if you have the code from the game. In which case, it's like, oh, heck yeah, I can do that. I just have to buy game. Which
I think the way that they've done it has been better than some other companies, so I am very happy about it. I think that this will work out okay, but the concern is for many fans is how far is this going to push the game back for release? And me, I'm just like, if you give me the full product, I don't care when it releases. I will, if I have to be 30 by the time I play this game, I will be 30 playing Final Fantasy VII. I am that dedicated. I will still have a PlayStation 4 in my possession. Even if I'm still working full time, I will still take time in the middle of the night to play. Believe me.
And a lot of the Final Fantasy VII diehard nostalgia players who are, let's face it, going to be one of the major markets.
Yeah.
They will be like you. For people who are less,
a lot of them will probably be in their 40s even.
Yeah, because when the game came out, I mean, like you said, 1998, it was wild. So, I mean, this is doable. We are willing to wait. And if you're not willing to wait,
it's kind of
years.
The ones who are more wanting to not wait, I firmly believe the people that are like, oh, come out faster, are kind of internet. I don't want to be mean, but people who get a little crazy to the point of insanity and who don't understand how development cycles work, who say, I want the game now, are kind of internet trolls, just a little bit. You're kind of going a little too overboard, guys. It's not going to come out this year. It's not going to come out next year. It may not even come out the year after that. We'll be really lucky if it comes out in 2020. That's my thought.
They announced it in, what, 2015? Yeah, because Breath of the Wild was last year, and it was the year before Breath of the Wild. So 2015, 5 years since the announcement that this was going to be a thing. Yeah, that seems reasonable to me, given how pretty.
Most development cycles are at least 3 to 4 years. And because of this development, I would be surprised if we saw it in 3 years. That means that they're going to be continuing to release them in their three game format. So it'll be 3 games for Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Which would work.
Which would work, because then they could continue to work on the second half, and that would kind of make the development cycle break up. So that's fine. You will be having to pay $60 per one, so you'd probably be paying over $300 by the end of it if you get a collector's edition like me. Because I would buy the collector's edition.
Yeah, or if you're cheapskate like I am, and I don't buy video games very often because I don't own a console besides a 3DS and a PSP. Yeah. But if I did buy video games, I would probably buy them like I do other things, which is, okay, let me look for the cheapest possible way for me to get my hands on this because I am a grad student. Cash? That is not a thing I have. I have to pay rent and my electric bill before I pay cash, before I have other things I can buy. So I would buy the $60 baseline, or heck, if I had patience, and I probably would because, like I said, I'm not a nostalgia buyer, I would probably wait a couple months. Probably not a year if I was really excited, but a couple months and be like, okay, wait for it to be used. Now it's down to 50.
I am the same way. I actually thank you, Amazon, for being wonderful with your discounts on video games. I save $10 per each time I buy a video game. If I pre-order it, I save $10 full, and I don't have to pay for shipping. Fantastic. And I like it whenever they go on sale where they go down to $34 and I'm like, oh yes, thank you. I saved $30.
Yeah.
And so those kinds I try to go for. When it can, this is the mistake of somebody who has been waiting for a game for 10 years. I bought the Final Fantasy 15 Collector's Edition. It was the Ultimate Collector's Edition. There was only 15,000 copies in print.
Waiting. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And it was it was my Christmas present. It was $300.
You didn't even like the game that much.
Not as much as I do Kingdom Hearts. I liked it enough, but it was very disappointing for me. But I do like the figure that came with it. I do like my art book. I do like my soundtrack. I do like the steel book. So what came in it was nice.
But the game itself
But
is
that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there's only 15,000 of them. So I didn't know before. I thought it was going to be great. I had so much faith. And I think that's why I have such an issue with it, is that I invested so much of my resources into it.
Yeah, now you're.
I mean, I still play it when they come out with new stuff, but the story was so disappointing. I'm a story gamer.
Yeah.
That is my thing. I am a story gamer. I play for the story. I rush through the gameplay elements to get to the end of the story. That is how I game. And that's always how I game, even since Pokemon.
I mean,
even when there's not that much story with Pokemon, I only play for the story.
I think it's got to be said that people who tend to like books more, who tend to be readers and gamers both, probably go more for that story, because we like, it's like a way to watch a story happening. It's another form of a movie almost, only an interactive one because you're playing a video game, which is how I feel about it. So I go very much for the story, because gameplay, honestly, because like I said, I didn't grow up with video games except with Game Boy Color. Gameplay frustrates me. I can't make it.
Yeah. When I get so frustrated, I have to quit for a while. I don't go back. I actually end up watching the ending of the game because I want to find out. And if I like, when it's 10 times that I've died in a row, I give up for a little bit. And then I go back, but I give up for a little bit.
Yeah. For me, there's no real impetus to bother because I don't game, really. I like watching people game. I enjoy the gaming community on the periphery. So for me, it is all about that story. And it genuinely frustrates me to have to game, because it's like the controller's not working with me. Which button am I supposed to mash at which point? I don't know what the freak I'm doing. Here, you who knows what you're doing, you play. I will cheerfully watch. Please.
Yeah, I think the story is the favorite thing for me. Now, I think we should also kind of talk about something we mentioned earlier. I think we should talk about Zelda a little bit.
Yes.
One of the things that we both really like the story on. I think that Zelda is a really good balance between gameplay and story, because the gameplay, yes, it can be very frustrating. And I'm talking about Breath of the Wild. I'm not talking about Wind Waker. I'm not talking about Twilight Princess. I'm not talking about the others, because I suck at those. I suck at them.
Yeah.
I've never finished them. They don't like me.
We're talking about
Breath of the Wild likes me. Breath of the Wild is very kind to me. And I like that. I like Breath of the Wild is kind to me. And it is something that I can play and I can go back to, and it's kind of a casual game, but the story is so investing that when you go back to it, you can go back to certain points in the story and you can kind of do anything you want. That's really cool.
I will say, for a linear storyline, which I tend to like, it's a little frustrating because there's not a linear story, because it's so very open world, which is great. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun to just go do whatever you want. But at the same time, for the part of me that really likes that linear progression of the story, and also the part of me that goes, oh my God, I just get lost and not know what the freak I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, the thing that I like about Zelda Breath of the Wild is that you can choose to be linear or not. So
provided you have a guide that tells you how to do it.
You have to have a guide, though.
You have
to have a guide to make it work.
If you're not exploring, then you want a guide.
Yeah. The kind of way that I like to progress this game in particular is that you start out with the story where we have Link awake and we want to know what's going on with him. He has amnesia. This is really fun. Let's find out what happens. Why does he have amnesia and all this? The storyline can go to where you've got map points, so you can go in a linear progression. And I like that. So, for example, I was able to go from the beginning of the story to the first beast very quickly. And I got that done in 2 hours. Second one, I kept on dying a bunch. So I was really happy that it was open world so I could go back and level up, so then I could continue with the story. But it doesn't always work that way in video games. Final Fantasy 15 did not do that very well. It was open world for middle half of the game and then linear towards the end, and the linear didn't make sense. So that was kind of the issue. But I think Zelda balances story and gameplay very well, because you've got the fun, intriguing elements. Like the fun parts were like where Link cross-dressed. That was fantastic. That was funny. So yeah.
But yeah, it's Breath of the Wild. I got to play a bit on the Wii U. We don't have a Switch.
But Wii U's still fun.
I'm intrigued by the Switch, but we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah.
we're playing on Light Within the Darkness 2's Wii U. And so it's like, for me, I'm still only 50% sure I got how the arrows and the bow versus the sword thing. But that's just because I'm video game incompetent, and I acknowledge this failing in my life.
You did wonderful. I didn't know how to deal with it either at first, to tell you the truth. You have to practice it, and even then I still mess up.
But it was fun. It was open world, which was kind of cool. And then we could use our guide because we had a guide. And I really think if you want to be linear in any form, shape, or fashion, or honestly to get anywhere in the story, you really need the guide.
Yes. Very necessary.
It was fun. It was a good game. I got frustrated on fights, but that's, like I said, just because I'm not the best gamer and I always get frustrated on fights. But yeah, it was a fun game. I wish that I could play it on the Switch, if only so I could compare, and also because I really. So the Nintendo Switch, which I feel we should talk about next.
Yes.
Seems like a thing of awesomeness.
It's cool. It's really cool.
I mean, my thing is that I have never invested in a console gaming platform. Like, if it has to hook up to my TV, I don't touch it. Just because, like I said, I didn't have one of those growing up. So for me, portable is when I'm usually going to want to play it. It's like I can take it in a car or on a plane, which is one of my big gaming areas. It's like, okay, I'm stuck on a plane. I'm going to play my DS or my PSP. Also, they're way cheaper usually, but that's not the point. But the Switch, on the downside, that meant I missed a lot of major releases that were fun and interesting. And it's like, I wish I had a PlayStation so I could get that Final Fantasy game that Catriona, one of my friends growing up, was talking about. Really do. But I don't. So now, with the Switch, it's like, you could get all the fun, shiny Zelda releases on Nintendo or whatever, and you can have it and you could play it as a portable.
Yeah, the great thing about the Switch is that it is something that you can play as a portable. The only thing that makes it a console gaming device is that you can put it inside of a dock and connect it to your TV with an HDMI cable and play it that way with the controllers. Basically, it really is a console that you can take with you anywhere. And I think it's really cool. I think it's a shame that, from what I understand, it's not touch screen, which I was like, well, it's got a huge screen. Why doesn't it have touch screen functionality? But I think they cut that out so that they could have a higher CPU usage, maybe. They felt like this touch screen wasn't useful, something like that.
Just because you're trying to maintain the console experience almost more than the handheld in some ways. And you can't go up and poke at your TV screen, so realistically, why bother?
Yeah.
But I think the idea is really cool. I like the idea that you could set it up and then just play it as a portable console, essentially, which is really cool to me. Again, speaking as
it's honestly a very cool system itself, the way that it's designed. And the only thing is that the controllers seem really, really small in your hands, from what I could see.
But
so that will be taking some getting used to. But once you get used to it, I think it'd be really fun. Yeah, and I think that once more games come out for it, it'll become more widely available, because right now it like sells out really fast.
Alternatively, to the small handheld edition, they do sell bigger controllers.
Yeah, they do.
So if it really bothers you and you don't want to bother getting used to the teeny tiny controller because they do look pretty small, then you can cough up, I would assume, $25, $30.
I think it's about 30, 40, something like that. I think 30.
30, 35, maybe $40 to get a bigger controller that your hand likes more, which is a totally viable option. It's not what I would do because I'm a cheapskate who's used to small controller spaces anyway, and frankly has pretty small hands. So I wouldn't go that route, but I know plenty of people who definitely would.
Yeah, the reason I'm waiting on the Switch is for more games to come out. So, because the only one that I would get would be Zelda, and that's it. I'm not a Splatoon fan.
I haven't
How
seen
did is this from the mail? Wonderful thing! Kingdom Hearts manga came out today. That's my excitement. So basically with the Switch, I wanted to kind of put that back until more came out, because then I was like, well, this is a $300 console. I already spent quite a bit of money back in December.
Yeah.
I can't invest that much again for a while.
Totally cool.
So I was like, I'm going to put this back on the back burner when it goes down a little bit in price. I kind of had to do that with the Wii, and it never went down in price. So I got a used one.
Right.
Also, my used one looks great.
Yeah, no, I like used systems because for me, video gaming, it's like, okay, I'm not invested in this enough to want to buy a shiny new console. I'm okay with buying a used one. They're usually pretty decent quality. But the other thing is, like, for me, again, I want to play Breath of the Wild. Some of the other ones might be interesting. Like, I'm intrigued by Splatoon, even if I don't play it personally. I've never played it.
It's like a multiplayer type of game, and I don't have a lot of people that are around me that I'd be able to really multiplayer in a way that I'd be content with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And so, and I've never been an online multiplayer gamer ever, really.
So there's that factor, but more importantly, it's like I have 2 series that I sort of kind of like playing on Nintendo. One of them is Legend of Zelda. So for Breath of the Wild, that would be fun. Granted, it would be one of the first ones I played all the way through, but still, because they don't do as many for the 3DS, and I just updated my system. And the other one, and the more important one in my mind, because frankly, it is the one that I crawl to get every time if I can, unless somebody reminds me, you haven't finished the last one, you can't go and buy the new one, dear. Give me a Pokemon game.
They are making one for the Switch. They are making one. They're actually going to be bringing Pokemon, the Alolan Pokemon games. They're going to be combining them into one.
Ooh.
And we're thinking it's called Pokemon Star.
That would make
possibly.
sense.
And it would be a reimagined version of the two of them together for the Switch. That is what the rumor is. That is supposedly going to be, this question will be answered at E3.
Yeah.
We'll find out soon.
Basically, once they come up with a Pokemon game, that is when I will really start considering and going, okay, can I feasibly afford this, or would I be better off waiting a couple more years, waiting and seeing if I can swipe somebody else's for a while and play it and see how it feels? Is this what I want to invest my money in, or do I just want to accept my fate to the 3DS and be happy?
The good thing about the 3DS is that it's still going to be pretty much a focus for them for a while. I love my 3DS. I just got Fire Emblem Echoes for it, putting a lot of time into it. Great story, great gameplay, everything's fun. So I think that for me, I feel very,
I'm debating whether I can justify Fire Emblem Fates, or whichever one is the one that's the easy version.
Well, the one that I got was the limited edition, so I had all 3 in one for the same price of one. And it was very much a dedicated project. I had to call Walmart because they were the only ones left, and I had to order it through the phone. And I barely got it, but I got it, and I played all of it, and it was fantastic. But I would say Birthright, if you wanted to try one of the Fire Emblem Fates games, Birthright is fantastic. Fire Emblem Awakening is much easier to obtain for a lower price, and it's fantastic.
Is it hard?
Not really. I got through it, and I'd never played a tactical RPG like that before.
Okay, I'll consider it.
Plus you can marry everybody off. You get to make your own ships.
I'm looking. That would be why I want to play Fire Emblem, but
you get to make your own ships. In Fire Emblem Echoes, you do not get to do that. You don't get to marry people off. It's entirely a story-driven tactical RPG. You've got 2 you've got 2 sides of the war, both fighting for the same cause. But you've got one for sure pairing.
Mhm.
And if you love them, it's fantastic. But if you're like, about one of them, you won't like it as much. But Awakening's fantastic because you get to marry everybody off. Fates is fantastic because you get to marry everybody off. They're both fun. I like them. And they're both for the 3DS. So
yeah, I just can't quite justify it because it's like you haven't played all the games you have. You don't need another one. Seriously. You know this to be true.
yeah. I kind of have to pull back myself. I was considering getting one of the new games that are coming out. You remember Hakuoki, right?
Of course I remember Hakuoki. I love Hakuoki.
Yes.
Ooh, tell me visual novels, please.
Yes, they came out with a third re-release of Hakuoki for the PlayStation Vita with 3 new suitors you could go after.
There's more pretty boys?
Yes, and they're very much pretty boys. They're fantastic. But I had already bought the PlayStation 4 one 3 years ago, which had 2 added routes. Now this has even more added routes to the previous ones that were added to the previous one. And it has new story and everything, and it looks fantastic. But I was like, this is $40. I just bought Fire Emblem. I've got to save money for
not yet.
Other things I'm looking forward to. I've got to be a good girl, so I have not bought it yet.
Someday.
So it's a very hard decision because I wanted my hot boyfriends.
Oh, well, someday. Okay, so given that it's been 2 hours plus, we should probably...
We did a good job with that. We've had a good live stream.
Yes, we've had a great live stream. It's been a lot of fun for us.
Yes. Hope you guys enjoyed some of our antics as well.
Yes. So that being said,
yes, in conclusion, we'll probably have another book of the season. Well, we don't know what we're going to do yet, but we'll talk about it and let you guys know in the next one what we've gone over. And with that, we'll probably continue with talking about other geeky things. It won't just be video games. We'll continue to other avenues. But
promise we'll talk about movies and things like that.
Yes.
And anime probably will enter in the discussion again. Next time, I think we should probably get into discussion of magical girls and why we chose to be magical aspiring author girls for our group title, maybe?
We can get deep into that. But that might be an entire episode in and of itself.
And that would probably be a good thing because we don't have a book of the season. So
yeah, so we may do that. We may have it be magical girl discussion next.
Yes, that would be a lot of fun. We'll see how it goes.
But yeah, we'll be signing off, I guess, now, and I'll let you sign us off.
This is us signing off.
Bye-bye.